Hi, this is Alan Shea with Art Society, and we're here today. We're going to let the artist introduce himself, share with the community why we're here with this exhibit, and he's going to give us some history, some perspective, and some passion and motivation about where we need to move with this to make sure that art in the community is marketed and become a part of it and is showcased in this community. Okay? So why don't you give us a little bit of information, background, names, and get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing? My name is John Barge III. I have been doing art for over 20 years, and I started doing art in eco-sustainability, just kind of experimenting. And it wasn't really more of a cultural thing. It was more really kind of creating that carbon footprint. And so what I was trying to do was trying to create, high-end conceptual pieces using things that are around us. And so as a kid, I used to make bow and arrows and create little different arts and crafts, and never knew that some years later I'd be kind of making this as a brand. And sports, the sports connection to the brand would be something that would just kind of bring my name out a little bit. Well, today I am here at the gallery, Al-Kebilan Cultural Center and Artist Gallery. This piece here is of Meadowlark Lemon. I had the opportunity of meeting him in my early 20s, and I remember shaking his hand, and his hand, left hand, going on my shoulder, and I never saw him again. And he was nominated as the legend. And some years later, I contacted a young Brett Meister, who actually was the first year VP, I believe he was in charge of communications. Well, he called me later on and said that he wanted to combine to, or agreed to do a Guinness World Record attempt using the Harlem Globetrotters as a human subject matter. So I followed about 5 Harlem Globetrotters, and some of them are watching now, and just really inspired about just doing this medium. Now this piece here is just kind of a signature piece of Meadowlark holding the balls. The signature basketballs, and he actually was nominated for the NBA Hall of Fame. And actually the Harlem Globetrotters were the first basketball league ever in the history of basketball to have a league of its own, starting in Harlem in 1926. So some of the art pieces that you see in the back are inspired by the Harlem Globetrotters. I used the cultural aspect of the Star Wars, and used the stormtroopers and kind of stylized their helmets to look like the Harlem Globetrotters. So this is the first piece. There are 3 pieces that I'm doing. The second piece is, turn this piece around. This is gonna be my 3rd piece. And this is Muhammad Ali. This is a quick drawing. And this quote was directly from Muhammad Ali. And it's called, "Not only do I knock them out, but I picked around." Okay, so this piece is gonna be a coffee-infused painting. A lot of times with studio pieces, they take longer, but live art pieces are more performance pieces for everyone to see. So I do a lot of pieces at music venues, sporting venues, and any time I can, get my hands on the platform. Excuse me, that's just the way that my brand is kind of flowing, and I'm always trying to connect to that. Recently, or I would say in February, I did a painting for Layla Ali at the Tribute to Courage, and kind of worked out a nice, cool friendship with her, and just have a nice, good rapport with her. But this is just, her father really inspired me in her artist brand, and my artist brand through the Ali brand is what I'm just doing these Ali paintings as often as I can. This way, if you point to that green cello, it's going to be a design of the WBC belt, and I'm going to start on that today. And there's going to be a red fist of Ali's hand in the center. And so Ali was always, they had a Muhammad Ali song that came out in the 70s, and some of you all know it. I can't sing good right now, but Ali would always talk about how you played your life, and whatever you did is pretty much your integrity, is how you played it out. So I took it literal and took a cello from a particular sponsor, and I'm just gonna literally paint that glove with the WBC, the coveted WBC belt on that. And Mauricio, who is the head of the WBC, is the one that's also going to be watching this Facebook Live as well. So what it is that I'm really kind of creating a brand platform and creating a culture behind the art. So John Barge III is the brand, and then Kingdom Artworks is the medium, and then I also do film. Now this piece here, this unveiling is actually 2 pieces. Ali is wrapping his gloves here. And in the original painting, I took the Everlast tape, I cut it up, and I glued it on the inside of the frame. And right where you see him wrapping, the cloth is traveling outside the frame, and it connects to Layla's raised hands. And right in the middle, it said, "Cut from the same cloth." and I did it in a crimson red. And what that was basically kind of connecting the past, because I almost had an opportunity to meet Muhammad Ali, but I didn't. But when I met Layla, she looked just like her dad, and I got a whole lot starstruck. And this is another one of Layla. A lot of people don't know that Layla is 24-0 and 21 knockouts, undefeated, 6-time world champion. And also, she went from middleweight to super middleweight, but she's pretty much prolific, and she's a fascinating person, and her and her husband are awesome people. For my community, I was originally from Virginia, but when we came out here, I lived in Pasadena area. And so this is pretty much my upbringing, where I was from. Went to Elliott Middle School, went to Pasadena High School, and then something happened where, rest in peace, the death of my father, he said to me, before he passed, he said, don't let great be a substitute for excellence. Don't be busy doing things that are just busy to do. Do the thing you're supposed to do and focus in on it with this uncanny, he always say like junkyard dog, pit bull mentality. So he said that there's certain things, he says, I know you're not the job kind of guy. So everyone says, you know, I tell everybody I paint for my life because I'm scared of a day job. You know what I mean? So what I have to do is be prolific in creating art to kind of still make a living. And this next piece here, ooh, yes, Prince. When Prince passed away, I'm sure everyone knows, it really broke my heart. I'll tell you this, I was actually under the covers, and I was laying on my back, and I had my headphones, and I was listening to a symphony orchestra on Diamonds and Pearls. And I was like, I was supposed to meet this guy. So anyway, this piece here is made from vodka, coffee, chocolate, red wine, and acrylic and latex inside the piece. And so the piece here was not necessary to make it look so much dead on like Prince, but it was basically the stylization of what I remembered Prince, when him having the big hair and the ascot and jumping on stage, and he was just, you know, pretty much entertainment itself. So what Prince has done was create a culture, and that's what I always wanted to do as an artist, to create a culture around my brand by performing live at a gallery showing, where other galleries you'll just see an artist with wine and cheese. I like to have a DJ, live art, everyone interacting and having fun. So it's really impromptu a lot of places, and some places, yeah, you do need a high-end location where you're trying to be that artist for the artist world. But this piece was made out of pure coffee, dark roast, and actually I was at home, and I took an actual coffee from Starbucks, and I got out of the car, and I didn't put any sugar in it, and I used that actual cup of coffee on that painting. So it looks like a watch. So what I like to do is kind of create something that's the provocative way of doing art, something that's going to separate me from other artists. You know, I think Mahalia Jackson, I think she's, one of the unsung heroes, the heroes that we forget about. One thing I like about it was that she had her own fried chicken. Who remembers Mahalia Jackson fried chicken? Well, I do my history and research. Well, anyway, someone said, I actually tasted the original recipe, and it's probably the best fried chicken I've ever had in my life. Okay, so this piece here was pretty much inspired by just her as probably your first gospel singers, but the first person to pioneer. And again, I don't do things on purpose. I do things with a purpose to want to create a culture behind it. There's a piece in the corner, and we'll probably show it on the footage. I'll just talk about it. The painting see the pink gloves in the corner? This was probably my first boxing event, and this is just called Pink Gloves. So I had so many, Pooch Hall from The Game. Oh my gosh, Gary Sturgis. A lot of names on there that I can't really recognize right now. One of the IBFO champions there, the bantamweight champion. And so that piece was for KO for Cancer. And that piece was really what kind of brought me out as an artist brand and creating just high-end art. The piece that's to the third piece to the left, the Kanye, the John Legend, and the Common. This is what I consider to me my avant-garde provocateur. This is the piece that really has shaped me as an artist, so that I can go. So I don't like doing hyper-realism, which looks like a photo, usually images that look like photographs. I like to tone it down to kind of have a gradient on it, and then add those strokes of paint to where that's how my mind's moving. So if anybody talks to me, sometimes I have to walk away from human beings because I'll be in my head. Well, that part of my head is now seen on the canvas. And that's just called good music artists. And that was when Kanye was, when the music to me was the best. No disrespect to what he has now, but this is just something where I think it was more revolutionary for me. And the piece to the far left, the Ali, is called Ali Speaks. And the wet part on the bottom, I got that from Bruce Lee when he said, be wet like water, because water kind of floats and navigates around. And I think Ali's brand was a way to where he could actually predict fights. And I think he moved like water. So from the ring all the way to his ring management, all the way to the exterior of his life, it was amazing. Now, there was a person, there was a story who was told by a family member, and the family member does not want to be known. And so they said, hey, I don't know how they call him. I think it was, I won't say who that person is. But anyway, where you going, Mr. Ali? I'm going to do it in this story. And Ali says, I'm going out of town. So Ali goes out of town. I'm going on vacation. Now, Muhammad Ali going on vacation could be something spectacular. He goes to Iraq to meet with Saddam Hussein to free the 15 hostages. And he was in his 6th year of Parkinson's. This man shuffled his way to a kingdom where you had a regime shift to where you couldn't deny the greatest boxer, who was Muslim himself, deny him anything. So when he walked in, he waited for 3 months and just navigating, walking around. Everyone in Iraq are hosting him, boxing gyms, and he's waiting for Saddam Hussein to call him and ask, to basically say, hey, I want to meet you in regards to the hostages. And so what happened, Saddam Hussein had to make the call. I mean, he could just sit there and have Ali sitting in his country. So of course Saddam, put a show in the front on, and Ali's sitting there the whole time and says, let's free the hostage. The highest point of this conversation was when the hostages said, tell Ali we love him and thank him. And in his shaking, he said, they don't owe me nothing. I'm just here to free people's mind and to get them free. And so guess what? When Ali was making his way toward the airport, he was moving along the slowest walk. And I know that was probably the slowest walk that they've ever taken to there, and he freed those hostages. 6 weeks later, there was a war in Iraq. So that was his, I'm going on a vacation. So I like to say that I think that everyone in here has a legacy that you have to continue, and the legacy starts within you. And I think a lot of times we all have hiccups and trespasses too, adversities that happen, and it's just, all I can say is you have to navigate. Now, I'm being directed by the pieces in the back. There are 4 pieces. I'm a big Star Wars fan. So the pieces in the back, 2 of them are inspired by the Harlem Globetrotters. And if you see at the top, it just says Harlem. So it's kind of taking a familiar, iconic brand from Star Wars to kind of lure the young and the old and bring them in about an old nostalgic brand of the Harlem Globetrotters mixed with the Star Wars. And then the one below is the basketball on top of the face of the stormtrooper. And then the bottom right, it says Fight the Power. And it's called Fight Trooper. And the trooper on the top is made out of gold leaf carrot. So you see the gold that's shining off of it. And that is probably one of the most delicate mediums I've ever dealt with, because you could blow onto it and that thing will flop in the air and never come back to you. So the significance about some of the stormtroopers pieces, going back to African Americans, the situation of slavery. So I kind of had a little backstory in my head as to how and why I created the pieces. It's just a timepiece, and I think everyone in America needs to understand, with everything that's going on with racial segregation, is that like Germany, like some of these other countries that have had these different racial issues, is that we just got to embrace America, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Say, yeah, slavery was here, this was here, and so when I create art, I'm creating art for the timepiece, for the culture, for discussion, not for anyone to come off and say, why did you do this, why did you do that? So there's a lot of times when I'll put an untitled piece, I may not even ask you what it means, or maybe even ask your interpretation, or other than what I want to tell you what it's about. Oh, these prints in the back, I'm sorry I'm being directed in the back as well. Those are just regular prints from the originals. That Bob Marley in the right-hand corner, that piece there is my first eco art. That actually was painted with, and it was very daring, with Bacardi rum, maple wine sugar, balsamic vinegar, coffee, and I actually used the end of a gold spray can, and I took the needle and sprayed onto it. Thank you.
That's why it's so important for John to articulate the history, the passion, and the presence. That's why I want to make sure you articulate that to all of the folks here today, what that is about. Because if he's not able to do that in his story, we're going to lose an element that's crucial for the next gentleman or young lady that comes along and believes that she can achieve some great prominence in this community. And that's what we want to try and encourage. So that's why you've been given this baton and this platform, so to make sure your vision and what your parents, okay, and what those that are here today want to see come out of this opportunity. Okay? So that's why you got to make sure you got to put all this in there.
Okay. That's good.
So that's why we want to make sure that everybody who's here joining us today can acknowledge whatever through questions or whatever they like to find out, because here's an artist from our community that's sharing with you his vision, his dreams, and how can he get this to become a part of our community as a whole. It's going to come from what you take away from this opportunity today and say, we want more. We want to see the city council put more art here in this community. We want to hear it more in our public school system. We want to make sure that people are aware that we do have artists or an art individual here in our community that can help elevate what we need to have in our system, in our public schools. Okay, so that's what we want. We hope. So with that being said, do you want to?
One other thing I want to interject. That's good. You're talking about the cultural aspect. I ask everybody to really, when you start to look at the art, just the art era of the art. Or the era that we're in now, and all of the different galleries that are out. My biggest thing is that I want everybody to patron the arts. So a lot of times when I go to certain art shows, I know that there's already buyers, because even myself, even as an African American going to an ethnic or cultural center that have individuals that look like me, or not necessarily look like me, but that are in the community of the city of Pasadena, I don't get a lot of patrons. So what I do, I'm going elsewhere to where I'm valued. So I'll get comments and likes, but my biggest thing is not even necessarily supporting me, but to support artists. The young children that are pretty much creating these paintings. And you know you have a platform, and you know you have time and money. It could just be 1 hour and say, hey, I'm gonna send you over to see John and get an art lesson. And so the other side of it is actually creating the culture with the people there. So when you start to see the legacy that's here, all this happened with my father. And so just to keep on camera, because we didn't get this, Mr. Alan Shea, I've known him for years. I walk in and he still looks the same when I was 8 years old. And by the way, so, you know, as they say, black don't crack, right? But so what happened is that even in that's part of my culture.
Correct.
And when your mother makes great food at the Red Hen, that's part of my food culture.
Thank you.
And so now you have food culture, now you have basketball culture, now you have a culture where now you have the elders. And see, I will put this out here, and I want to run. The reason why the Black Lives Matter movement has been such an caustic hate situation now is because the youth that are in that don't have elders to go to. And that's all it is. And so what happens is that they're acting out of pure anger, and they're walking and stopping freeways, breaking the law, and they don't have any direction or directive. So when you look at Dr. King had his, you know, his denomination to help him out. And so he would go in and he could be able to walk into a pool table and say, hey, guess what? I'll beat you in 4 games of pool. And if you do it, I want you to walk with me. And he did that. So now you're in Albany, New York, you're in Selma, and now look how many people are walking peacefully. So at the end of the day, you know, people tell me, well, maybe you be the next civil rights guy, but sometimes I don't want to own it, because a lot of times we emotionally connect to it. And when I see people not connecting to it, then it's discouraging. But at the end of the day, it should never stop that. So I think that everyone here pretty much has a part. I am very much pro-black, but it does not mean, this is very critical. It doesn't mean I'm anti-white, because at the end of the day, when we basically navigate through this world, there are different people from different races and different culture that can actually make a community effort, especially in the city of Pasadena, which is a huge melting pot. So I get long-winded at times, so I'm going to jump back into the painting, but thank you.
Well,
yes.
Well, what we'd like to do is going to wind it down. We're going to give you thank you, giving them applause. But what I would hope we would get out of today's show, because this is actually a show that we're going to air for those of you who didn't know, and we wanted to surprise John, because we want the community to know that we are in support of those that are actively taking the responsibility in a sense of purpose, and that's what John has done. Close it up. So are there any questions from the audience about art, the history of Pasadena, and John himself and his vision? So hopefully what he shared with you kind of brought forth some thoughts here. So do we have any questions?
I'm Jordan Bryant, And I wanted to know, what are some of your future art projects that you're looking into? And yes.
Well, yes. Well, it's good you say that. Well, the current thing is actually working with the Harlem Globetrotters to create the platform of using the players as subject matter for a new Guinness World Record attempt for the longest story narrative in like the history of the world.
Cool.
So basically, it's 5 feet by 150 feet long. So basically, each story narrative is told by each current and past member of the first 12 legendary players. Millark Lemon, Curly Boo Johnson, and I'll be painting it along. So we're basically just planning some international trips, U.S. trips with you helping me out. And so that's one of the things there. But just doing a lot of film projects, a lot of Guinness World Record attempts, packaged in a project presented to a coffee company. And so because I use coffee and chocolate infused, so yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Right, okay. Good. Anybody else?
My name is Elizabeth Ellis, and I'm a part of the board of the directors here at the Kibble Culture Center. And I really was admiring your work. I have a class here on the weekend, and as we were dancing, we were looking at your artwork, and it looks so real. So I was wondering, what do you use when you start? Do you just start by looking at a picture, or what are you doing when you start your artwork?
What I normally do, I print the actual black and white image of the color image. And then what I do, I squint my eyes, and what I do, I locate the tone, the dark and the light, and then what I do is turn a track on. The retina of my eye picks up the music sound in the track, and I'm like literally feeding myself into the likeness of it, and then when the song comes on, I'm pew! And sometimes to the point where I color to the beat of the music. So that's why I use live music. So I'm able to kind of be prolific and create high-end pieces. So I'm sitting on literally 250 pieces of art that I've done in a short time. So when I'm looking at it, the biggest part, if you look at every piece, are the eyes. And the eye is pretty much the gateway to the soul. So when you're looking at that, and the biggest thing is that, like I said, I want you to look and say, is that Kanye West? And you should say, yes. If you say no, then I'm not doing my job, because that's what I branded myself as. So there's a lot of things I can't do. I can't do super implied news paintings because I haven't branded myself as that. So a lot of times in the art world, when you have stoppages, it puts lapses in your craft, and then the curators and the gallery people, they don't take your brand seriously because you're breaking, and now, okay, well, we're gonna put a pause on that. So my biggest thing is to shape into the detail of the person, starting with the eyes. So.
Okay, I'm Rie Owens, and I'm the curator for the gallery here. We've been doing art shows for about 1.5 years at this point. I found John on Facebook, and I was just really happy to find him and have him come along and be willing to have a show here. But anyhow, my question is, what motivated you to start painting in edible items like materials, coffee, tea, et cetera, et cetera?
It started with a Bob Marley piece. I saw it, and I said, I want to do something provocative, And so I said, you know what I'm gonna do? I had some Bacardi rum. It was a little troubled time, and I had Bacardi rum, maple, wine syrup, balsamic vinegar, and I would put the reggae on, and with the thumping of the beat, I would sit there and look at it, and I would always pray to God, and I would sit there, and it's kind of like my meditation prior. And then I just went in and start throwing stuff in, put it, and then I took the piece and I lifted up and let the ingredients roll down to create the locks. And that was just really saying, I just want to do something different. And the coffee was there, and that's what happened. And then later on, I said, you know what? I started reading about eco-sustainability and things, and this is stuff I've been doing as a kid in the backyard in Altadena, and you coming over the house talking to my dad, So with that, it's just basically kind of, and you know what? I tell you what, in addition to your question, to add to it, I've lost a lot of artist friends and a lot of curators because they wanted me to stick with the artist medium. You don't need to use a coffee paint. You don't know if the authenticity of the painting. And I mean, fiercely. And to the point to where they've fallen off, and all of a sudden I end up meeting a bunch of new people and new persons, and all of a sudden, someone calls, hey, Tyson, can you do the unveiling for Mike Tyson? Oh, yeah. Can you come for Sugar Ray Leonard? Yeah. And so now I get all these boxes within 1.5 years, and then I go to Vegas and, hey, man, where are you at? And it's one of the boxers. So it's amazing to kind of have a name to where people can know it. And then now is to be able to monetize it. And I think going back to what you were saying, this isn't a question you asked, but kind of going to what we talked about, a lot of times artists are just looking for the creative process. most artists want to hold their art. I don't want to have, only piece I want is my Marley piece and my little Jesus piece that I did. And other than that, I want everyone to have the art. So a lot of times, the biggest thing in the current issues or the current affairs, the current, is you have to monetize the word current into currency and to create a platform so now they can latch on to it. Because when you're in a wave, a current wave, people are, guess what? The best fish and the fastest fish are in those currents. Meat is better. And so I want to be able to jump on that wave and not be in still stagnant waters. So.
So,
Hello.
Hello,
So
sir.
nice to meet you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Vic Picu. I'm president of the Pasadena Society of Artists, which is now 92 years old. But anyway, when you mentioned Charles White, it just really made me kind of get really excited because a very dear friend of mine met Charles White when he was about 10 years old. And here's a picture of Charles White, who was a member of PSA many years ago. And so it's really nice to see this circle continue to evolve, you know, and it never stops, right? I wish I would have met Charles White, but at least a dear friend of mine had met him when he came to their school. So
And I used to play at his park. You never knew that as an artist,
yeah,
that I'd be sliding down his slide in his park, that I'd be an artist myself.
yeah. I wish I would have met him.
well, more than anything, and this is why, again, what we're attesting to here is what the community, if he doesn't bring this history up and we don't document the history, we're going to
I visited
lose it.
John Muir School 2 years ago to visit some of the AP students, and it was so exciting to meet these young boys and girls who are 14, 15, 16 years old, and see them working in the classroom, and there was a Terrence, I think it's Terrence Anderson. He's a resident ceramic artist who's actually in the classroom doing his artwork, and it was really nice to see that community action. But anyway, it's good to be connected to the community. So thanks for all we're doing.
Absolutely. So we're gonna try and get this closed in. And last but not least, that was a good segue that came into play. John, what's going to be your implementation of a shadowing program to foster what you started today?
Well, it's called Impulse Live, which I go around and I just do live art everywhere I go. But a lot of times I found myself bringing a child, that's happened one time, on stage to paint a segment on my... So, yeah.
Well, what I'd like to do is make sure you give the viewers your telephone number or your website so they can contact you. And what I hope would happen is that we challenge our community and everybody, make sure you're successful and you grow a new child every month in the area of art.
Yes, well, my website is www.johnbarge3.com. Instagram, artofjb3. Pinterest is the same thing as well. Twitter is the same one, artofjb3. You can email me at jb3artassoc@gmail.com, and also to my art rep at chasingjlb@gmail.com. Thank you.
And last but not least, the woman who's allowed us to have the platform and the means to bring the community together, Miss Dee, she's going to share with you all the passion she's put into this place and give the folks here a little bit of what this Culture Center means to all of us.
Thank you, Alan. And I just want to say thanks to all of you for coming out today and this young man coming and sharing.
This is Alan Shea signing off with Our Society.